Hello, creepers. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and drop in the comments the worst place you can imagine during a zombie outbreak. Now let's get to it. I've always lived my life a little differently than most people. While everyone else crowded into apartments and offices, I chose the woods. I bought a small plot of land about 40 minutes outside Seattle and built myself a quiet cabin. It was simple, off-grid, powered by solar and a backup generator. Peaceful, predictable. That's how I liked it. My name is Elias Cross, systems engineer for a regional EV company. My job? Keeping solar charging stations, battery arrays, and electric drivetrain prototypes alive long enough to impress investors. It's technical work, lots of wiring, diagnostics, thermal management, and long hours in a cold warehouse. But it pays well, and more importantly, it lets me live alone, far from people. When I'm not working, I'm in the forest, bow in hand, hunting deer, tracking sign, learning how nature breathes. It's the closest thing I have to meditation. I don't have a wife, no kids, just my mom and dad, living 3 states away in rural Montana. We talk, but not often. They know I'm a loner. They stopped trying to change that years ago. That morning started like any other. Coffee, short drive, park my Cybertruck in the company lot, clock in. I had no idea it would be the last normal day of my life. I was calibrating a power inverter when I heard shouting from the other side of the shop floor. At first, I ignored it. People dropped heavy tools all the time. But then I heard screaming. Real screaming. I walked around the corner and saw one of my coworkers, Daniel, lying on the ground with another guy on top of him. Except, something was wrong. The man straddling him wasn't attacking like a normal person would. His jaw was shaking, teeth gnashing, ripping into Daniel's neck like an animal. Blood sprayed across the concrete. "Hey!" I yelled, before my instincts told me to shut up. The attacker snapped his head toward me. His eyes, God, his eyes were milked over and bulging, veins crawling across his skin like black roots. He hissed, low and animalistic. Then he charged. I stumbled backward, grabbed a metal torque wrench off the tool rack, and swung. The heavy steel connected with his face, dropping him instantly. Daniel wasn't moving. I knelt next to him, reaching for a pulse. But his body jerked, spasmed, legs kicking. His eyes rolled back, and foam leaked from his teeth. Within seconds, he twisted toward me with the same dead, hungry stare. "What the hell? Daniel!" He lunged. I swung again, straight into his skull. He collapsed. But more figures rounded the corner of the warehouse. 3, maybe 4, stumbling, growling, sprinting at me with inhuman speed. I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I just remember the sound of footsteps slapping the floor behind me, getting closer and closer. I burst through the emergency exit, sprinted across the parking lot, and jumped into my Cybertruck. A pair of bloody hands slammed against the window as I floored it. Thank God for Tesla glass. As soon as I hit the road, I dialed 911. Nothing. Just a busy tone. Over and over. Emergency lines don't get busy. They can't get busy. But they were. I tried calling coworkers. No answer. I tried 3 more times. Still nothing. Then I called my parents. "Elias! Thank God! Honey, something's happening." My mom's voice was shaking. "People on the news, there's some kind of disease." My dad shouted something in the background. A loud crash echoed through the phone. Then another. Then rapid, frantic banging. "Someone's trying to get inside!" Mom screamed. "Mom! Mom!" I yelled into the phone. The sound of shattering glass, a cry of pain, and then silence. The call dropped. My chest tightened. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I called 911 again, desperate, but all I got was a pre-recorded message. All emergency lines are currently unavailable due to national safety protocols. The message was broken, corrupted, like the system itself was failing. I needed help. Police. Anyone. I turned toward the city. Seattle was already gone. I didn't even make it to the first district before everything turned into chaos. Crashed cars, scattered bodies, people running everywhere. And the infected. God, they were everywhere. Sprinting full speed, slamming into cars, chasing anything that moved. One of them leapt onto my hood, smashing its face against the windshield until cracks spiderwebbed across the glass. It didn't break, but I could see it weakening. That was enough for me. I hit reverse, swung the wheel, and floored it back toward the mountains. Back home. Back to my cabin. My only safe place. As I reached the forest road leading home, tears blurred my vision. My parents might be gone. My co-workers were dead. The world was collapsing faster than I could process. But I wasn't dead. Not yet. So I kept driving. And that's how the last normal day of my life ended. Alone, panicked, and racing toward the only shelter I had left, with the whole world right behind me. The first night back at my cabin, I barely slept. Every creak of the wood, every rustle outside, every distant echo made my pulse spike. I kept my phone beside me, checking it every 20 minutes, even though I knew it was pointless. Just the same dead screen mocking me. By the second day, I tried calling everyone in my contacts. Friends, old co-workers, distant relatives, even the people I hadn't talked to in years. Nothing connected. Every call failed instantly, as if the entire network had been ripped out of the sky. Then the towers went silent. No bars. No signal. TV wasn't any kinder. My solar array kept the cabin powered, so I turned on my small monitor and cycled through channels. News anchors were either panicked or pretending not to be. Footage showed cities burning, crowds stampeding, soldiers firing into hordes that didn't stop, even when riddled with bullets. By the fourth day, even those channels went dark. The radio was my next shot. I turned on my ham radio, the one I bought because it might be useful someday. I guess someday had arrived. I scanned every frequency I could find, jumping between static, half-broken broadcasts and emergency tones that faded in and out. Most stations were gone, but the ones still alive didn't offer comfort. The outbreak has spread across multiple states. National Guard overrun. Shelter in place. Fatal, aggressive, bites spread the infection within seconds. No known cure. Not once did anyone say things would get better. Silence settled over everything. Supplies started thinning after that. I'd eaten through my fresh food. Canned goods were draining fast. But unlike most people, I wasn't terrified of running out. Prepping wasn't my identity, but living alone forced me to think ahead. I had water filters, preserved food, and shelves of gear I once thought I'd never use. Now it all felt like a lifeline. Still, food doesn't replenish itself, which meant I had to hunt. I set out early the next morning, bow slung over my shoulder, moving quietly through the tree line. The forest was still familiar, but it felt wrong. Too silent. No distant hum of cars, no airplanes, no hikers laughing somewhere in the distance. Just my footsteps. Even the birds seemed to have gone silent. Still, I needed meat, and my bow was the safest way to get it. I spotted a buck near the ridge just past the creek. Perfect broadside shot. I drew, steadied my breathing, and released. The arrow sank into its flank. A clean hit, just not lethal. The buck bolted into the trees, crashing through brush as it bled a bright trail across the moss. I followed slowly, keeping low. The blood trail wasn't hard to track, but as I crested the next slope, I froze. Something else had found the deer first. A single infected was crouched over the dying animal, shoulders jerking as it tore into the flesh. The sound it made, wet, frantic chewing, echoed through the trees. I wasn't expecting one to be this deep in the woods, not this far from the chaos. I took one step back and snapped a twig. The infected's head snapped toward me instantly. Blood smeared across its face, jaw unhinged and twitching. It screeched and charged. I pulled an arrow and fired. The shot punched into its chest, but it barely slowed, staggering forward like I'd only shoved it. I drew again. This time, I aimed higher and released. The arrow buried itself through the skull. The infected dropped mid-stride, skidding across the pine needles until it stopped a few feet from my boots. I backed away from it, breath shaking. The deer was ruined now, contaminated and half-eaten. No way I could risk taking any of it home. That was food gone. Time wasted. But there was nothing I could do except try again tomorrow. I headed back before the light disappeared. By the time I reached the clearing around my cabin, dusk had swallowed most of the forest. That's when I saw another one. It wandered slowly around my yard, pacing near the porch like it was drawn to the glow from my exterior lights. I crouched behind a tree, nocked an arrow, and released. The shot hit clean through the head, dropping it instantly. I hurried inside, turned off the outside lights, and pulled every curtain tight. I wasn't letting any more wander toward me tonight. The next morning, I ate breakfast in silence. Canned beans, cold, straight from the tin. I wasn't hungry, but routine kept me sane. After days of nothing but static and emergency alerts, I knew the radio wasn't going to suddenly give me good news. Still, I turned the dial on my ham radio again, scanning through dead frequencies like I had every morning. Static. Static. More static. I sighed and kept turning the dial anyway. Maybe I was being stubborn. Maybe I didn't want to admit that the world was as empty as it sounded. I just didn't want to give up on hearing another human voice. Then, a faint tone cut through the static, followed by a voice. A looped broadcast. This is NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain Complex, designated safe facility. All surviving civilians are instructed to proceed. Repeat. NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain Complex, is secure and operational. I straightened in my chair. The message repeated again. Calm, official, strangely steady for the chaos happening outside. A safe haven, a functioning military facility, a place with walls, supplies, people, or a trap. I sat there listening to the loop cycle again and again. Part of me wanted to believe it, but another part whispered that going there meant crossing several states filled with infected, roadblocks, abandoned highways, and God knew what else. I didn't need civilization to survive. I had my cabin, my land, food, water, solar power. Everything I needed was right here, and I could stay hidden for months if I had to. Cheyenne Mountain might as well have been on the moon. Even if the message was real, how would I get there? My Cybertruck could never make it on a single charge. I'd need to stop several times. And where was I supposed to charge it? A supercharger station? A town? A city? All suicide. Finding an old gas-powered truck wasn't an option either. I'd have to go into town, search houses or garages, then fuel it, meaning I'd need to visit a gas station. That idea alone gave me chills. Gas stations meant enclosed spaces, blind corners, metal doors that echoed, and infected drawn straight to sound. No, it wasn't worth it. I shut off the radio, but the silence that followed hit harder than the message. My parents' voices echoed in my mind, old words from old arguments. You isolate yourself too much, Eli. You need people. No man is an island. They had spent years trying to pull me out of my shell, years trying to convince me that being completely alone wasn't living. I'd always brushed it off. I was built differently. Nothing wrong with solitude. Except now the world was gone, and solitude wasn't a preference anymore. It was a sentence. And if my parents were still out there, hurt, scared, needing help, this safe haven was exactly where they'd hope I'd go. I let out a long breath. Damn it, I muttered. I knew what I had to do. But that brought me back to the same impossible question. How the hell was I supposed to make it that far? My eyes drifted toward the window, toward the solar panels outside, glinting in the morning light. I had built that array myself, sized it, wired it, fine-tuned it. I was an engineer. Power systems were what I did. Maybe I didn't need a gas vehicle. Maybe I didn't need the grid. Maybe I needed to engineer my way out of this. The idea started small. Use my panels, hook them directly to the Cybertruck somehow, trickle charge it on the road. But it fell apart quickly. My array was too small. The charge time would be days, maybe weeks, and I didn't have half the specialized equipment I'd need to convert the system properly. I'd need tools, industrial-grade equipment, materials, spare cells, racks, wiring, panels, a place to work. And then it hit me. My company's central warehouse and testing facility. Everything I needed, every tool, every panel, every part, was sitting right there. If I could reach it, I could convert the truck bed into a makeshift RV, load all my supplies, and build a mobile solar charging system strong enough to keep me alive across the country. It was stupid, risky, dangerous, but it was possible. And for the first time since the outbreak began, I had a plan. I spent the rest of the day trying to shake the weight of what I had decided. Hunting helped. Moving helped. Thinking less helped the most. I managed to bring down 2 rabbits with my bow, found a patch of late-season berries along the ridge, and filled my water containers from the stream below the cabin. It felt like any ordinary day in the woods. Calm, steady, familiar. But beneath it all, my thoughts kept circling back. I couldn't believe I'd convinced myself to do this, to leave everything safe behind, to cross a country crawling with infected for a safe haven that might not even exist. It sounded insane when I thought about it too directly, but I couldn't deny something else either. Part of me was excited, not about the zombies, not about the danger, but about the project, about turning my Cybertruck into something new, something built for surviving the end of the world. The idea lit up a part of me I hadn't felt in years. Purpose, a challenge, a chance to build something bigger than myself. It was comforting in a strange way. The next morning I packed lightly, brought my weapons, and headed toward the facility. The roads were quiet. A few infected stumbled out of driveways or across the street when they saw the Cybertruck, but none were fast enough to keep up. This area had always been sparsely populated. Now that worked in my favor. The first real obstacle was the facility gate. It was closed. Someone had managed to shut it after the chaos. That meant people were alive, at least for a while. Maybe they tried to barricade themselves in. Maybe they hoped rescue would come. But the control panel was offline, and there was no way for me to open it from the outside. I had one option. "Sorry, buddy," I muttered to my truck, then hit the accelerator. The Cybertruck slammed into the gate, bursting it open, and ripping part of my front bumper in the process. I winced. Great start. At first, the facility's open yard looked clear. No movement, no shadows, no sound. Then they appeared. 3 of them, stumbling out from behind the storage outbuildings. People I recognized. Co-workers who must have been the ones who closed the gate, hoping to survive. But they hadn't. Their jaws snapped. Their eyes were white, bulging, hungry. They charged full speed. "I'm sorry," I whispered, and floored it. The truck rolled over them with a heavy crunch I tried not to think about. I didn't slow down until I reached the central warehouse and testing facility, stopping right in front of the main loading bay. I stayed inside the truck for a moment, scanning every direction, waiting for more. 2 more infected emerged from behind a row of solar testing racks. I stepped out, drew my bow, and let the arrows fly. 2 shots, 2 skulls. Clean. I jogged toward the entrance door, fishing my keys from my pocket. My hands shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline still burning through my veins. The door opened with a familiar metallic click. I sprinted to the loading bay controls and started raising the massive shutter, preparing to bring the Cybertruck inside. I made it halfway back to the truck when I heard snarling. 2 more infected, sprinting toward me from the far end of the yard. They must have heard the gate being rammed earlier. No time for arrows. I dove inside the Cybertruck, slammed the door, and threw it in reverse. The infected slammed into the front before I backed over them, the truck shaking as their bodies crunched underneath. Necessary. Ugly, but necessary. I drove into the loading bay, lowered the shutter behind me, and locked every door I could find. I checked the offices, the storage rooms, the battery lab, the repair stations, top to bottom. The entire place was empty, or so I thought. I turned a corner near the fabrication room, and something lunged out at me. We both hit the floor. Rotting breath filled my nose as the infected snapped at my face. I shoved its head back, reached for whatever I could grab, my hunting axe, and drove the blade down hard. The skull split. The body went limp. My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear. Once I was sure, absolutely sure, the facility was secure, I finally let myself breathe. Then I got to work. I dragged equipment out of storage: sheet metal, insulation boards, brackets, wiring, portable panels, battery modules, tools. I stripped the Cybertruck bed down to bare metal, built out an enclosed sleeping compartment, insulated it, added storage shelves and tie-downs for food, water, and gear. While scavenging the facility's old test vehicles, I found a heavy-duty winch, rusted but functional, and mounted it to the front of the truck to replace the bumper damage from the gate. Then I assembled a fold-out solar array system, simple, sturdy, and large enough to actually charge the Cybertruck over the course of a day or 2. A small home, a mobile workshop, a lifeline. By the time I stepped back to look at it all, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the outbreak. Hope. The Cybertruck sat in the center of the warehouse like a beast waiting to breathe. Steel, panels, wiring, storage. The fold-out solar array. Everything I needed to cross half the country without relying on a single working power grid. Looking at it made the fear in my chest loosen a little. Not gone. Just quieter. I took a deep breath and laid it all out for myself, clear and simple. Stick to the wilderness. Stay away from cities. Stay alive. That was the plan. Major cities were suicide. Even small towns were risky. Wherever people used to be, the infected were now. I needed open ground, clean sunlight, water sources, and enough wildlife to keep me fed. Places where noise didn't echo. Places where I could see trouble coming. I chose 5 stops that matched that criteria. 5 isolated forest zones with enough space to camp, set the panels up, and wait a day or 2 for a full charge. Stop 1. Payette National Forest. Wide forests, clear river valleys, easy to vanish into. First major push. Stop 2. Boise National Forest, just south of Payette. Mountains, sunlight, natural meadows. Good second charge. Stop 3. Sawtooth National Forest. Sharp ridges. Deep by lakes. Remoteness that felt like outer space. Stop 4. Bridger-Teton National Forest. Wyoming wilderness, stretching as far as the eye could see. Stop 5. Medicine Bow National Forest. Final stretch before Colorado. Remote plains. Quiet woods. Perfect last charge. Then Cheyenne Mountain. By my rough estimate, if nothing slowed me down, I could reach Colorado in a little over 2 weeks. But that was a dream scenario. Reality? A month, maybe more. Between charging delays, hunting, and detours around infected groups, anything could happen. Still, it was possible. And possible was all I needed. I packed the last of my gear, locked the facility's doors behind me, and rolled out onto the access road. The sky was overcast. The mountains looked sharp and cold. For the first few miles, I kept waiting to see people on the road. Drivers, hikers, anybody. But nothing moved. No cars. No smoke from chimneys. No distant voices. The world felt emptied. I stayed quiet, gripping the wheel as I made my way southeast. The roads narrowed into forest routes, cracked asphalt giving way to dirt and pine needles. I saw abandoned cars here and there, some crashed, some empty with doors hanging open. I didn't stop to check any of them. I didn't want to know what happened to the owners. Hours passed. By afternoon, the light softened, slanting through tall trees. My route cut through hills and valleys, always pushing toward Idaho. I kept my eyes sharp for movement. And movement came. About 20 miles from the Washington-Idaho border, near an old trailhead, I spotted a body slumped on the ground. Then another, and a third. Fresh. Not decomposed. They weren't moving, but they were sprawled in the exact twisted positions I'd seen dozens of times already. Jaws locked open, fingers curled, clothes torn. Infected. Dead ones. Something else had killed them. Maybe wildlife. Maybe a fall. Or maybe they starved when nothing wandered close enough to attack. I slowed, but didn't stop. The last thing I needed was to stand near corpses that might draw more infected. The forest thickened. Pines rose like columns. A cold wind rattled branches overhead. Somewhere deeper in the woods, I heard the quick crunch of something running. Fast. I gripped the wheel and kept going. A minute later, a buck shot through the trees and bounced across the road, terrified by something behind it. But nothing followed. Just silence. Good enough. By sunset, I crossed into Idaho. My first goal was close. The mountains opened into a wide valley with scattered meadows and a river cutting through it. Payette National Forest. Stop 1. I found a clearing near the water, backdropped by tall pines and fallen logs. No footprints, no tire tracks, no broken branches. Untouched. Perfect. I stepped out, scanned every direction, then began unfolding the solar panels. The metal clicked into place. The array angled toward the last hour of sunlight, catching every bit of it. I checked the truck's systems, made sure the battery was stable, then gathered wood for a small fire pit I wouldn't light unless absolutely necessary. I walked down to the river and knelt beside the water. Clear. Cold. Clean. I filled my bottles, filtered them, and looked across the tree line. I saw movement. Not fast. Slow. Drifting between the trees. A single infected. Its clothes were shredded from branches. Its face was blank and pale. It didn't see me. It just wandered, head drooping, like it had been walking for hours with no goal except the faint scent of life. I stayed perfectly still until it disappeared into the woods. When I finally breathed again, I returned to camp, ate a rabbit jerky strip from my pack, and sat against the truck with my bow in reach. The sky turned black. Stars filled the gaps between branches. Charging took the entire next day. The infected didn't return, but I kept watch from sunrise to sundown. On the morning of the third day, I packed up and headed south toward Boise National Forest. The drive was rough. Old dirt roads curled along cliff sides. Rock slides blocked parts of the trail, forcing me to clear debris by hand. I passed an overturned RV with claw marks on its windows. Blood dried along the side door. I didn't slow down. By noon, I saw the first sign of Boise National Forest. Tall mountains, high ridges, thick timber, and bright open slopes. Stop 2. 2 stops down. 3 to go. The long road was only beginning. The road into Sawtooth National Forest tightened into a single winding lane, carved between steep walls of granite. Pines crowded the edges like silent watchers. My battery was hovering just above 40%. Enough to make it to stop 3, not enough for surprises. I got surprises anyway. The first came in the form of a rock slide, a fresh one. Tons of shattered stone had tumbled down the mountainside, burying the road in jagged debris. No going around, no easy path through. I stepped out, bow ready, scanning the slopes for movement. Nothing, just the wind hissing through the trees. I spent an hour clearing a narrow line, hauling stones until my arms trembled. By the time I finally rolled the Cybertruck through, the battery had dropped another 5%, running climate control, lifting the suspension, inching slowly over unstable ground. Only a few hours into the day, and already behind schedule. The switchbacks started soon after, tight, steep spirals of loose gravel that shifted under my tires. The Cybertruck fishtailed once, then twice, before I finally cursed and threw it into park. Fine, winch it is. I hooked the cable around a stout pine, tightened the line, and eased the truck up the incline. Slow, controlled. Mechanical advantage, doing what traction couldn't. It worked, but winching meant draining more power. By midday, I was far lower on battery than I wanted to be. I reached stop 3 with only a sliver of daylight left, a small clearing tucked against the slope. Quiet, secluded. I unfolded the solar array, checked the sky, and forced myself to eat even though my nerves were shot. Darkness swallowed the forest quickly, leaving only the faint glow of the truck's interior lights. That's when I heard the branches snapping. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. A black bear emerged from the tree line, massive shoulders swaying, nose lifted. It huffed, then took another step toward the truck. Close enough I could see the wet shine of its eyes. "Come on. No, not tonight." It circled once, sniffing, ears twitching. Then its posture changed. Muscles tensed, head lowered. A growl rolled from its chest. It wasn't curious anymore. It was sizing me up. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I slammed the truck into drive and tore out of the clearing, branches scraping the sides as the bear lunged after the movement. The truck held, but I wasn't about to park and find out how determined it was. Driving at night was stupid. Draining battery early was worse. But being trapped alone with a bear in pitch darkness? Suicidal. I drove until the forest thinned, finding a new clearing hours later. Safe enough. Quiet enough. Exhausted, I set the panels again and collapsed in the back, sleep coming in short, tense bursts. It took 2 days to charge the Cybertruck. During those days, I spent my time hunting and foraging. Then, I pushed toward Wyoming. Stop 4, Bridger Teton, felt different the moment I crossed the border. The forest was scarred, blackened trunks rising from ashen soil. A burn zone. Old, but not old enough. Charred branches snapped under the tires. Deadfall forced me into tight detours around skeletal trees ready to collapse in the slightest breeze. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the screech of an infected, then another. They didn't find me, but their echoes followed for miles. Then came the eroded cliff road, a narrow ledge carved into the mountain, one side eaten away by time and storms. A tire slipping by even an inch meant a drop straight into a jagged ravine. I crawled along at a walking pace, palms sweating against the wheel, checking mirrors, sensors, anything. The truck stayed steady. My heartbeat didn't. The final night at Stop 4 hit with a sudden, punishing cold. Frost coated the interior windows. My water bottles were half frozen. The panels had charged slower all day, and the cold felt like it dug straight through my clothes into my bones. No zombies that night. No animals. Just the cold. And the realization that every mile toward Colorado was going to hit harder than the last. I woke with a throat so raw, it felt lined with sandpaper. My head throbbed, my nose was clogged, and every breath scraped my lungs with cold air. Not infection, just a common cold, the kind I used to ignore with a day off and hot tea. Out here, it was a different kind of threat. Fatigue, slowed reflexes, worse judgment, vulnerability. Last night's freezing temperatures had done their damage, and the lack of food wasn't helping. My stomach twisted painfully, empty for more than a day. Water wasn't much better. I only had a single half bottle left. I needed to hunt. I needed water. I needed anything. Stop 5. Medicine Bow National Forest was supposed to be straightforward. Charge, hunt, rest. Instead, it felt like the forest had been hollowed out. No tracks, no scat, no movement. Hours passed with nothing but silence and the crunch of frost under my boots. Desperation made me push deeper than I planned. 2 hours, then 3, then 4. My legs ached. My lungs burned from the cold and the sickness. I kept going. That's when I found the first tent. It lay collapsed. Poles snapped. Canvas shredded. A second tent was torn open like something had clawed through. Sleeping bags lay scattered, soaked with old blood turned dark brown in the snow. A cooler sat overturned. Contents missing. A campsite. Recently used, but abandoned violently. Zombie carnage. I froze behind a tree, scanning the tree line. No movement, no sound. They could still be nearby. But I was starving, and this might be my only shot. I crept in quietly, bow drawn, stepping around dried blood and torn fabric. Most of the gear had been ransacked, probably by the campers themselves before the attack. But inside a broken plastic bin, I found gold. 2 cans of soup, a bottle of water half full, and an unopened bag of trail mix miraculously untouched. I slipped everything into my pack. I should have left right then, but survival makes you greedy. I checked a final tent, nudging the flap aside with the tip of my bow. Inside were claw marks on the walls, a sleeping pad split open, and a snarl. I whipped around just as a zombie charged from behind the tent corner, teeth snapping inches from my face. I stumbled back, barely raising my bow in time. It slammed into me, sending me onto my back. I drove my knee up into its chest, shoved it off, and fired point blank. The arrow punched through its skull. It collapsed instantly. But the forest erupted with answering snarls. One to my left, 2 more behind the fire ring, another crashing through brush. They'd been nearby the whole time. I sprinted, lungs burning, vision blurring from sickness and adrenaline. A fast one barreled out of the tree line and tackled me hard. The impact knocked my bow from my grip and sent me skidding across dirt and frost. Its jaws snapped at my neck. I grabbed its head with both hands, fighting with everything I had left, fingers slipping on cold skin, slick with old blood. My knife was still sheathed at my side. I wrenched it free, shoved the blade up under its jaw, and drove it into its skull. The zombie went limp, collapsing onto me with dead weight. I shoved it off and scrambled to my feet. More snarls echoed closer. Dozens now. My bow lay several feet away. I sprinted for it, grabbed it, spun, and fired on instinct. The arrow dropped one sprinting straight at me, but I didn't wait for the others. I ran, hard. Branches whipped my arms. Frost cracked under my boots. My breath came in ragged, cold gasps. The snarls faded eventually, outpaced or distracted by the corpses left behind. I didn't stop running until the silver gleam of my Cybertruck came into view through the trees. I slammed the door, locked it, then collapsed against the seat, shaking. Only when I felt safe behind reinforced glass did the adrenaline crash hit me. I ate everything I scavenged, cold soup straight from the can, handfuls of trail mix, and drained half the water with hands still trembling. Warmth from the cabin heater rolled through me, soothing the ache in my chest. For the first time in days, sleep pulled me under instantly. Alarms jolted me awake. Sentry mode flashing red warnings across the screen. Movement detected. 2 zombies were circling the truck. Maybe the same ones that chased me. Maybe new ones drawn to the smell of food or the noise I made overnight. I didn't give them a chance to gather more. I folded the solar panels, floored the accelerator, and left the clearing behind in a spray of frost and dirt. I wasn't far from Colorado now, but the road ahead was blocked by a fallen log too big to move and too thick to cut through quickly. I checked the map and found the nearest detour, a small town. Perfect. Terrifying. But no choice. I crept through the streets at a crawl. Cars abandoned everywhere. Windows smashed. Some buildings burned. I stayed slow, weaving around debris, trying not to draw attention. Halfway through town, something stepped into the road. A child. Small, pale, head tilted, infected. but my instincts reacted before my brain did. I jerked the wheel to avoid it, swerving into a parked sedan. The impact wasn't huge, but the sedan blared into a deafening alarm. Every zombie in town heard it. They poured from storefronts, alleys, smashed windows, dozens, then dozens more. Sprinting full speed, I slammed the accelerator. They hit the truck like hailstones, denting panels, cracking the solar mounts. I plowed through them, bodies rolling under the wheels. A second car blocked the road. I rammed it aside. A third flipped as I clipped it. The battery gauge dropped dangerously as I pushed the motor to its limit. Zombies clawed at the doors. One smashed against the windshield, further cracking it. Another clung to the roof until a sharp turn sent it flying. I didn't stop. I didn't slow. I drove through hell. When I finally burst out of the last street onto an open road, my hands were shaking violently, throat burning, chest tight with sickness and fear. But Colorado was ahead. Cheyenne Mountain rose from the earth like a fortress carved into stone. As I approached the access gate, several armed soldiers rushed out, rifles aimed directly at me. "Stop the vehicle!" I braked hard, hands raised. "Stay where you are," one shouted. "We need to verify you're not infected." Cold, exhausted, hungry, half sick, and nearly out of battery, I leaned back in the seat and finally let myself breathe. I'd made it, or at least, I'd made it this far. I woke to the soft beeping of monitors and the clean, sterile smell of a real medical room, something I hadn't experienced since the world collapsed. My head still felt heavy, my throat raw, but the fever haze had lifted. A medic stepped beside me. "Good. You're awake. You were dehydrated and running a high temperature. Cold, not infection. You'll be fine." Relief hit harder than I expected. "You've got someone waiting to speak with you," she added. A few minutes later, a broad man in uniform entered the room. Rank patches still intact, boots polished, posture military clean, even in the apocalypse. "Elias Cross?" he asked. I nodded. He extended a hand. "Colonel Marcus Harlan, welcome to Cheyenne Mountain. You made one hell of an entrance." I shook his hand, still feeling weak. "Just did what I had to. That's exactly what surprises me. We sent that emergency broadcast not expecting anyone to cross multiple states and actually show up." His brows lifted. "And in that custom-built Cybertruck of yours? Impressive." He motioned for me to follow. "Let me show you what you survived for." The interior of the mountain was a maze of reinforced tunnels, humming lights, and the faint echo of people, actual people, moving with purpose. Harlan guided me through it like a man proud of his home. "Cheyenne Mountain used to be the backbone of North American defense," he said. "Now it's one of the last truly functional strongholds." He brought me to a wide glass window overlooking rows of generators and equipment. "We run on triple source power," he explained. "Solar fields up top, micro hydro turbines in the runoff tunnels, and a geothermal loop. Enough redundancy to keep us alive long term." I nodded, understanding the scale. "That's incredible." "Had to be," he said. "Can't exactly call the power company anymore." We moved deeper. Greenhouses stretched under rows of grow lights. Vegetables, herbs, rows of seedlings. People tended them quietly, focused on their work. "That's our food supply, supplemental with livestock in the lower levels. Chickens, goats, a few pigs." Next came the water filtration wing, massive tanks, humming pumps, and pipes weaving like arteries. Every drop gets recycled, nothing wasted. Then we reached a balcony overlooking a cavernous underground hangar. Trucks, armored vehicles, and even a pair of helicopters sat in various stages of repair. Fuel is limited, but we keep everything maintained. One breakdown can cost lives. He finally turned to me, crossing his arms. Everyone here contributes, he said. Every civilian, every soldier. So tell me, Elias, what's your expertise? Systems engineering, I answered. Power infrastructure, EV mechanics, solar design, battery arrays, off-grid construction. Harlan smiled. Exactly what I was hoping to hear. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Rest today. Tomorrow, we'll figure out where you fit. And trust me, we need people like you. He left me standing at the overlook window. Below, hundreds of survivors worked together, rebuilding, maintaining, surviving. Looking out over the heart of the mountain, I felt something stir. Not hope, not peace. Just the sense that my journey wasn't over yet. Not even close.